Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a special welcome to our regular viewers and those of you who perhaps are viewing the Roundtable for the first time. This is a very special edition of Roundtable, a program brought to you by the Opposition United Workers Party, a program that deals with the pertinent issues of the day, and we touch on subjects that are of interest and concern to you, St. Lucia. And today I have with me two young people. So we're going to be having a very youthful edition of Roundtable. But before I introduce my guest, there are a couple matters that I just want to touch on briefly. I think some matters that have to be clarified and, to clear the air on one or two issues. And of course, you would anticipate and expect that CIP has been in the air. It is a matter of controversy these days. And we know what is going down as far as what has happened. Just to refresh your memory, we have the CEO of CIP being named in a RICO case as a defendant, and of course it is our understanding that the minister himself, Dr. Ernest Hilaire, will be joined in the case as a defendant as well. And the claim is that there is under-invoicing and other illegalities taking place in the program. This, of course, has brought our program into disrepute, and it's threatening to damage the reputation of St. Lucia and the integrity of our CIP program. Now, of late, in his defense, rather than clear the air on some matters and some pertinent questions that have been asked of him, the minister responsible for CIP, Dr. Ernest Hilaire, has sought to muddy the waters, so to speak, by scapegoating, by floating some red herrings, and as usual, shifting blame and pointing fingers. Of course, his favorite whipping boy would be the leader of the opposition, the Honorable Alan Chasney, and his favorite target, the United Workers Party. And so, rather than taking responsibility, being the person responsible for the program, and if anything untoward is taking place, he would have to take the responsibility as well. He is attempting to shift blame. And here's what Dr. Ernest Hilaire has insinuated in a recent interview on Power FM. I think it was 3 in the morning, where he sought to suggest that reporters, and he insinuated as well members of the opposition, were calling CIP staff to threaten them, and as a result causing staff to want to resign from the organization. Now that all stemmed from the fact that for a long time now we have been hearing that the chairman of the CIP has resigned. We have heard, and that is Mr. Lon Theophilus, but we have heard nothing from the Prime Minister, nothing from Dr. Hilaire. When asked directly whether the chairman has resigned, he said he did not answer the question. He said the best person to ask would be the chairman. But you would think that the minister would be the one to whom the resignation would be submitted, and so he is definitely in a position to know, but he has refused to answer that question. My information is that the chairman, Mr. Lon Theophilus, has in fact resigned, and that in itself raises red flags. That in itself brings about a number of questions, because a very interesting time that this resignation has come about, just when the CIP program seemed to be in turmoil, and there seem to be all kinds of controversies floating around the program. And we recently heard too that the corporate secretary as well has resigned. That the minister has kind of denied, and didn't give a definitive statement, but kind of denied. But is suggesting now that the resignations are precipitated by threats that are made by a reporter. And I watched an interview between himself and Lisa Joseph, and he even suggested that Lisa Joseph may have been responsible for calling the CIP office and threatening staff there. This, of course, she vehemently denied, and so it just shows you how far that those government officials go to not accept responsibility, but to cast aspersions, blames, and so on, and very often intimidate other people. But Dr. Ernest Hilaire, the questions will not go away until you answer them. You are responsible whatever is happening to the CIP program right now, and you must provide the answers. We recall that the last time you were asked to give us an account of how many files were allocated to Galaxy, one of the developers in the CIP program here in St. Lucia. You indicated that you had to first get permission from Galaxy to tell us, and that in itself is an insult to St. Lucians, an abdication of your responsibility as a government official, and you must remember that you are accountable to us. We are the citizens of St. Lucia, and we are responsible for you being where you are. We pay your salary. It is our passport that we are asking about. It's our citizenship that is in question, and you owe it to us to answer those questions, and do not hide behind the excuse that you had to first get permission from Galaxy, which, by the way, is a foreign company, okay, to determine whether or not you, as a government official in a sovereign country, can account to the citizens of that country as to what is happening in our CIP program. Further, I want to remind you, Dr. Ile, that in fact, you really and truly owe us the information because it is stipulated in the regulations that governs the CIP program that you have to ensure that a report is tabled annually in Parliament. Okay, a report that is an audited account of what is taking place in the CIP, and by so doing, the opposition will have access to it, and the St. Lucian public will have access to it, and that we will know, if we're interested, what is happening in our CIP program. I want to remind you, Dr. Hiller, that you have not provided for 2 years now the reports that you owe to St. Lucians that you should have tabled in Parliament. The question again is, why have you not complied with the regulations, with the rules governing the CIP? Rules that were set, the legislation that was set by your own government. You have flouted it. You have not lived up to your responsibility of providing those reports. We are demanding that you provide the reports that are due, and that the St. Lucian population get access to those reports so that we can know exactly what is taking place in our CIP program, especially with all the controversy and all the cloud that is hanging over our program. So, and true to form, we also have other government ministers, again, scapegoating, floating around red herrings, not taking responsibility and not dealing with the real issues. And I remember a matter that I've mentioned in the past, that documentary on catfish, where an interview was conducted with Dr. Eubaldus Raymond, a former minister in the UWP administration, who had to resign, which all St. Lucians are familiar with that story, because he found himself in a controversial situation. He had an interview about the matter, and what came out during that documentary was the fact that there are 2 sitting government ministers who appear to have been involved in blackmail. And I want to remind all St. Lucians that blackmail in St. Lucia is a criminal offense. It is a crime. So if it is true that those 2 government officials were involved in blackmail as they were accused, it's saying that we have 2 criminals sitting in our cabinet and in our parliament. The 2 gentlemen in question who were fingered in the documentary, who were named, one of them was actually named, the picture of the other was shown, but I have since heard and seen video clips, or rather audio clips, on social media that named both ministers, and I will call the names of those 2 ministers, and I will call them out to make a statement to the general public on the matter. The ministers in question are Honorable Joachim Henry and, not surprising, Richard Frederick. The 2 of them, it is alleged, were involved in orchestrating a blackmail against Dr. Eubaldus Raymond. That is a very serious allegation that they owe it to us to come forward and clear the air on that matter. Prime Minister, I want to remind you that you have said in the past that if any of your ministers were engaged in, involved in, or were fingered as being involved in corruption, that you would swiftly take action to deal with the situation, because you would not tolerate corruption within your fold. I want to ask you to look into this matter. And furthermore, I want to inform you, if you do not already know, that your name was mentioned in those clips that are going around on social media as having known what is taking place. It is suggested on one of those voice clips that you, Honorable Philip J. Pierre, Prime Minister of St. Lucia, decided that you were not going to do the dirty work yourself, but that you engage your minister, who was not a minister then, but of course one of your colleagues, the Honorable Joachim Henry, to do your dirty work for you. These are all very serious allegations that places a cloud over the integrity of your ministers and the reputation of your ministers, and you as Prime Minister as well. So please, you owe it to St. Lucia to come out and make a statement on those matters. Now, I have called on Richard Frederick and Joachim Henry to do the same. Richard Frederick's response, again, to scapegoat, to float red herrings, and so on, to cast aspersions. What Richard Frederick did on his last show was to make an accusation that I, along with 12 or 13 other individuals, tried to interrupt his program by calling him during his program on video call. And he went as far as to call out the number that he claims is my number. I want to state categorically that that is not my telephone number. My telephone number, for all those who care, is 716-1000. The number he called out was 485-3760. That was a number I once had, but it is over 5 years now that I'm not in possession of that number. So Richard Frederick, if you want to make a claim, you want to cast aspersions, you want to make an allegation, do your research and be honest. Do not make up stories to try to divert attention from the real issues that pertains to and concerns the government that you are a part of, and the controversies that you are a part of, the scandals that you have contributed to. So I want to repeat, and I will ask you, Richard Frederick, to desist from ever calling my name again and making that allegation. Okay? I'm letting you know, just as you know, it is false, it is not true, it is a lie on your part to suggest that I tried to call your program. And I want to go further to say to you, Richard Frederick, do not flatter yourself. Leonard Montoot Spider will not be calling you. I have no reason to call you. I have no reason or desire to associate with you. So do not call my name in your nonsense. What you ought to do is to go out and clear the air on many of the many allegations that you are involved in, like the underpricing of the bananas land that you sold way below market price, like the abuse of the vendors in Castries Central that you have victimized and further went on your program to try to intimidate. Okay, deal with those controversies. Tell us why Mikey Pilgrim resigned as the chairman of the housing board, and while you're at it, tell us whether you are, in addition to what your colleagues said about you, that you are a money launderer, you are a murderer, that you are a drug dealer. Tell us if, added to that allegation, that you are a blackmailer, whether any of this is true. That will serve you and the population better. I think they'll be more interested in hearing about that from you. So, ladies and gentlemen, so much for those rogues in office. And somebody keeps reminding me that CIP stands for not Citizen Investment Program, but Crooks in Power. And I will not go there this morning. I want to instead deal with something more uplifting as we, on our program today, during our discussion, take a more futuristic, youthful view of what is taking place in St. Lucia. And to assist us in getting a clear picture of what I just said there. I think we have to hear it from the youth themselves. But too often we attempt to speak for the youth, whereas they are well equipped and quite capable of doing that for themselves. So I have here with me two young people this morning, which makes it a very special program because, like many of you, I'm sure, I am very much interested in getting the youth perspective on what is taking place in our country today, what will affect them in the future. As we always say, they are the ones who will carry the future of this country. And so I will first start with the youngster on my left, and of course, as tradition goes, we'll start with the ladies first. And so I have here Zina George, and Zina George is hailing from Micoud North, but I will let Zina George introduce herself to you and tell you who she is. Zina, welcome to the program, and please let our viewers and listeners know a little about you.
Okay, good evening, and thank you so much for having me on this program. I think this edition of RoundTable is a long-awaited one, having the youth on board. My name is Zina George, like Mr. Montut indicated, and I am from the constituency of Micoud North. And I would like to say a special good night to all my constituents from Micoud North and to all the listeners of the United Workers' Party who are tuned into this show. I am very involved in youth work, not only in my community, but on a national level. I also serve as the second vice president of the United Arm for the United Workers' Party. And I have been a member of the party for a very long time, and a proud member that is.
You have sitting at the table with you somebody who knows what a long time means. You cannot you cannot be for a long time. But give us an idea of roughly how many years you've been involved.
Okay, so I've been with a member of this party for over 15 years. I've been through the rough times, I've been through the good times, I've been a member in opposition, I've been a member when we are in parties, so I've gotten a taste of both aspects of what it's like. And I think this time around that's the worst taste in my mouth, because honestly I don't think I could take another 2 years of what's happening in our country as a young person. It's very distasteful. I think it's gotten to a point where I might just pack my bags and leave if this continues. Okay,
we'll delve further into this, Zina, because you're already getting me very curious with what you have said so far. But I take my words back. You haven't been around for a long time. In fact, 15 years is a long time by any measure. And we also have with us on the panel a young gentleman who hails from Babonneau, and that is Mr. Cletuson Leon. Cletuson, welcome to the roundtable. It's a pleasure to have you. I would like you to tell our viewers and listeners a little about who is Cletuson. Leon. Cletuson Leon.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Cletuson Leon. I'm from the constituency of Babonneau. I am the president of the Babonneau UWP Youth Arm. I've been involved in doing youth work for a couple of years now, and I take great pride in the development of youth. And this is why I think the government of St. Lucia is failing us right now, because youth development is really low at this point. And I share the same thoughts with Zina. If I have an opportunity to pack my bag and leave, I would leave as well, because our country is being drained, our country is going in the gutter, and I feel like we could do much better.
Thank you very much, Cletuson. Ladies and gentlemen, let's brace ourselves, because based on the introduction itself, it seems there's a lot we have to learn and appreciate from the youth themselves. It is a little frightening already. You had two young people talking about the way things are going. They are even considering packing their bags and leaving this country. That is not what we want. We want to have those people remain in this country to help continue the development and progress in this country, and to continue building this country. But we will find out why that disposition on their part. But let's first start with some of the issues I think that are of critical importance, that concerns and involves young people. Now I'm posing this question, an open question to both of you, and I expect both of you to chime in at some point. I am talking now of one of the national crises that we have in this country that involves young people. That is the crisis of gun violence, largely carried out by not just young people, but specifically young men. We have quite a number in the process, not only getting injured, but many of them losing their lives. And those who do not lose their lives, the victims, we have the perpetrators who in a few cases are captured, convicted, and are confined to prison. So while we have not lost them through death, in a sense we are losing them because they become incarcerated, and during their productive years, instead of being out there making a significant contribution, they are behind bars. And so I think I consider it to be a crisis. I want to know, what do you young people think? Is this a big problem affecting young people, and what is your perspective on it? Any of you can go first. We're talking about the crime situation, especially as it relates to gun violence in St. Lucia.
Well, I mean, it's affecting the youth greatly because it gives us, how can I say it, a bad reputation. So for instance, especially being a young man as well, you could be raised from a community where they classify it as a hood, and you may not even be involved in gang-related activities, but they will already pinpoint you as probably a gang member, or as they say in Lucian terms, a VNEG, and etc., which I know friends of mine who comes from these areas, and it's even hard for them to get a job because of where they come from, because the employees already classify them as that's a gang-related person, or they might bring this type of stuff to their office. So I think it affects us greatly, and that's something I would really like to see go down, because the young people have a lot to offer, and we are not given the opportunity to show that because of what's going on right now.
On this, I mean, the young ladies are not that much involved as much as the young men, but it affects the young ladies because we have one or two cases, and we also have it is the same young men that you all will be looking to as partners, as husbands, as fathers, and so on. So it does affect young women as well. Let me hear your perspective.
Yes, it does. It affects young women. I would say almost as the same ratio as it affects the young men, although we are not directly involved like the young men, but it would affect us because before I answer that question, Spider, I would like to ask a question in terms of the firearms and the accessibility of our young men. So many of our young men having firearms. One of the questions we need to ask ourselves is, where are they getting it from? Where are the firearms coming from? We've had a few cases in the past where we have young men at schools being able to enter the school grounds with firearms. So one of the first questions we need to ask ourselves is, where are they getting it from?
That's a significant question, given the fact that we do not manufacture guns in St. Lucia. It means that those guns are coming into St. Lucia. How is that happening? Who facilitates it, if anyone facilitates it, and why aren't we doing more to stop the influx of guns being trafficked into St. Lucia? And that brings me, before you continue, that brings me to an issue that is significant, because I remember during the reign of the previous administration, a few of the things that we were doing that included strengthening and beefing up the border control, and there was going to be a special unit to deal with that, so that we could make it more difficult for illegal stuff to come into the country. In addition to that, we had the K9 unit that was very effective in detecting not only drugs but even firearm as well. And interestingly and surprisingly, upon assuming office, the current administration disbanded the K9 unit. Of course, given the disaster that resulted with the proliferation of even more firearm in this country, and the pressure that they got from the public and the opposition, they are now reintroducing the K9 unit, which is a good thing, and I'm sure it will make a dent. But you see, there were even people making assertions that the K9 unit was disbanded because the K9 unit, unlike human beings that can be corrupted, will not be accomplices. If they find a gun, whether it is yours or mine, they would sniff it out.
Yes.
And, these are the things that, make you ask questions and so on. And, of course, there were those, how you refer to them, those scanners, the detectors, the metal detectors that were being used. All of a sudden, strangely, it was said that some fluid fell on them and they were not operational anymore and so on. So these are the things that get you very skeptical and make you ask questions about what is going on. But we know that, I just want to quote some statistics here, in terms of, crime is in different forms, but the ultimate is when you have a loss of life. That is irreversible. And so we talk a lot about homicides in St. Lucia. Now, in 2021, we had a record number of homicides in St. Lucia, I think it was 75. Now, the first thing anybody will tell you is that for part of 2021, the United Workers' Party was in office. But if I'm not mistaken, come the end of July, because the elections were held in the end of July 2021, 26th of July to be specific, there were just about 20-something homicides. By the end of the year, there was 75, a record number. And you would realize the ratio had gone up by then. In 2022, you had 72. In 2023, we repeated the record. We had 75 homicides. I don't want to talk about 2024 because I don't like what I'm seeing already. I don't. And when I spoke about the trend last year that we were on path for a new record, the Prime Minister's response, that's the person who is responsible for national security, was that I am praying for homicides to take place in this country. Okay, far from that, because I'm not safe when a situation like that takes place. And I want to ask you all a question in a moment, because it touches many of us indirectly or sometimes very closely when these things take place. And so, to date, we are close to 50 already. Okay, just at the end of July, we are close to 50. Again, on path for setting, equaling or breaking the record that has been set. Now, as young people, setting records is among your aspirations, but I'm certain it's not this kind of records we're thinking about. We're thinking about Julian Alfred setting new records at the Olympic Games. We're thinking about you guys going out there and doing great things for St. Lucia, not the kind of notoriety we're looking for in this country, setting records in that regard. And so when I think about it, we all are affected, and it is a serious scourge that is taking place in our country. I want to ask the two of you, have you ever had anyone close to you who have been a victim of gun violence or violence as a whole in this country?
Well, for sure, me last year around, I think it was June or July, my neighbor, who's also my cousin, close cousin of mine, he died to gun violence actually in the neighborhood, not too far, like a few steps from his house. Just came from the beach with his girlfriend and the incident happened. I mean, it's been a year since he died and the family still feels the pain about missing him. I miss him sometimes. I could hear him calling my name most times in the morning, because like he usually does. It was like a normal thing. I hear him calling me, and he used to call me Shasne as well. So I miss hearing this stuff, and I mean it affects you. And the fact that it happened in your neighborhood, and I could have been caught in the crossfire as well, because it was like 5 minutes after I passed that exact location that it happened. I wasn't too far away, hearing the gunshots, coming back down and realizing he was on the ground dead. So
I'm very sorry to hear that.
yeah.
But we are coming to the end of the first segment. Zina, when we come back, I'll ask you the same question, and we'll look at the fact that contrary to what many of us believe, those of us for whom it has not come close to home, we just hear it on the news. It has become almost a routine daily thing that we pay no attention to, and we do not appreciate and understand the impact that it has for others. It is people who have died, not just names and statistics. It is individuals who have relatives, who leave people behind to mourn, who leave people behind that are impacted, and like Cletuson just mentioned, even a year later, the effects of his passing are still being felt. And so we want to, make that appeal again, because St. Lucians have become numb, I suspect. We have become desensitized, and that another murder is not a big deal. You may hear a conversation, if you have 4 or 5 murders for the weekend, it might spark conversation. But today, if somebody was killed yesterday, don't be surprised you don't hear about it, because we don't even talk about it anymore. That's how desensitized we have become. But as for our government, despite the fact that you have a Minister of National Security, who is the Prime Minister, you have a Minister responsible for crime prevention, you have a Minister of Home Affairs, and you have an Attorney General, I can assure you, you will not hear a word from them. And my conclusion is that is because, despite the fact that you're paying them to deal with those situations, they don't care. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned. We are going to be back with our two special guests on this special youthful edition of the Roundtable, brought to you by the United Workers' Party. I'm sure you see me looking younger already. We will be back shortly.
If you're going to grow your country, you have to grow the capacity. You have to make sure they're healthy. You also have to make sure they're well educated. But that takes a plan. It takes a commitment. And it's not about just words. It has to be much more significant. And I have not heard anything here today, Mr. Speaker, that would give me any comfort, nor should it give any other St. Lucian comfort, that they're going to use this opportunity they found on their lap appropriately, and to make sure that the young people of this country and the workforce of this country are going to get jobs that they can make careers of, jobs they can raise their families on, jobs in which, yes, they can become international and raise their own standard of living. That should be the aspiration. I did not hear any of that today, Mr. Speaker. I thank you. Okay, the member from Castries, he said it was only a madman who would believe that tourism would have recovered.
Mr. Speaker, I'm challenging you. Anything I say, he'll say, I'll hear it. That's a challenge. Anything, Mr. Speaker, I'll say that the member for me to South says, I'll play a tape. I challenge him. Anything he says, I say, play a tape.
Flashback.
The government is continuing as usual, as if nothing happened. The government of St. Lucia is the only government that believes that tourism will get back to how it was pre-COVID. I think it's the only government in the world that believes that. There's no other government. There's no other government, I think, who believes that except the government of St. Lucia. So what do? We continue with business as usual. We continue to build an airport based on the fact that our airport would get its income from arrivals. Are you serious? Do you really believe? I never knew. I never understood the impact of tourism in St. Lucia.
Welcome back, viewers and listeners, to the Roundtable. As indicated earlier, we have a very special edition today. We have two young people as our panelists. We have Ms. Zina George and Cletuson Leon, who is on our panel and will be discussing matters of concern to the youth and be giving us a youthful perspective on what is taking place in our country today. And so I want to get right back to my guests. I asked Peterson the question in the first segment about the impact or effect that those homicides are having on young people, given the fact that predominantly it is young people who are victims anyway. But we call figures. I come here and I say last year there was a record number of 75 homicides, and that is just a statistic. I said to you, we have more than 47, I think, or about 47 people who have perished in St. Lucia today as a result of violent crime. That is another statistic. But I just want to remind St. Lucians, while we have become numb, almost immune to the situation, unconcerned sometimes to the extent that we don't even talk about it anymore, those people have a name. Those people have families. Those people have left loved ones behind. Cletuson has indicated to us that a cousin of his was a victim last year, and the impact that it has on his community and on him even up to now, a year later. I want to ask you, Zina, do you have the experience of having anyone close to you being a victim of a homicide?
Fortunately, I have not had that experience, right, and I'm thankful for it every day. However, I do have brothers, and the thought of what's happening when they go out, it's like you have to be messaging them every minute. Although they're not part of that life, but because of what's happening, you don't have to be part of that life. You could be at the wrong place at the wrong time, because those people doing those sorts of crimes, they don't care. They're out for their target, and they will get the target however they have to. Look, was it last year or year before at Denry Carnival, we had a young lady who was in the crowd, and unfortunately she lost her life. But when my brothers go out, I have to be messaging them constantly. Are you okay? When you get home, message me. To me, I don't want to be living that life, that fearful life, that my brothers cannot go out and enjoy themselves because of what is happening. So it is sad that although I have not been through it, but just the fact of what is happening, and knowing that you have a family who goes out, who goes to enjoy themselves, and not knowing if they will come home safe just because of what somebody else wants to do, it's sad.
So, St. Lucians, you heard from the youth themselves. We are in fact living on the siege, and what kind of quality of life is it when you are living in fear? True freedom, it does not entail living in fear. And I want to remind the authorities, our current government, the appointment of ministers to get a salary and to have a portfolio of the nomenclature having something to do with crime is not enough. Something must be done. Drastic actions must be taken to show that you are serious in addressing the problem. I want to remind you that one of the primary responsibilities of any government is the safety and security of its citizens. That you have to take more seriously, and that you have to show that you are willing to step up and to deal with. So much for crime. I mean, we can go on and discuss far-reaching implications of crime. We know what it does to the quality of life, as you have mentioned. You have the concern, and I'm sure for yourself as well when you go out, not just for your brothers, but Cletuson mentioned how it affects him and so on in terms of the loss that he suffered from a family member. We know that it can have economic implications because, it can affect our main industry, tourism, because if St. Lucia is seen as a war zone, people will not come to St. Lucia. And affect even local commerce, because we knew at one point in time business in Vieux-Fort was on a standstill. People were closing their shops early and all of that because of the threat of violence. But I want to go into another area that is kind of related to crime, not specifically homicide, but a more general crime thing. Today, I must tell you, when I grew up, just a little while before you, there were clubs, and even when there were not organized clubs, we formed ourselves into groups, and the things that we engaged in were more wholesome. Sports, going and look for fruits or hunting birds and things of that nature. I understand that times have changed and you have other options as young people today, things that did not exist in my time. There was no such thing as internet and phones that you could carry everywhere you go in your pocket and so on. But there is what is known as the gun culture that has developed in St. Lucia, a very frightening development. However, it appears to be a very attractive option to many young people. From your perspective as young people, why do you think this is so? Why do our young people gravitate towards gang? What is responsible for the rise in the number of gangs that we have and the proliferation of gangs throughout our communities, and how it seems to be la mode these days?
So I would say that unemployment is one of the leading factors which causes our young persons to go into that direction. And like you mentioned, tourism is our main income. A lot of our single parents, because we have the mothers who are normally the breadwinners for the family, and a lot of our single mothers work within that tourism industry. So they leave home 6 o'clock. By the time they come home, they don't see their child. And that is where I think the government or the the community comes in to what programs are there to help those mothers, the after school programs. There is nothing in place for those young persons, so they come home, they get the love from that particular person, they want to feel loved, they want to feel welcome, so they would go into that direction. So I think it is important that there are more programs in place for our young persons, and I think if that is done, maybe we would see a decrease in our young persons gravitating towards the gang life, like we call it.
So you're saying that there is that need for association, that need for belonging. And if, for example, we have more organizations like clubs and so on, that we can channel the young people to, that would reduce. And you also mentioned unemployment as well, because we know that the unemployment is still high in St. Lucia, but it is even higher among the young people.
Correct.
So, Cletuson, can you chime in there now? What do you think about this whole gang culture that has emerged? And, you know, as a young man yourself, we see predominantly it is young men who are involved in gangs.
So it is, hit the nail on the head when she mentioned unemployment, but in my opinion as well, it's also the lack of opportunities. So they look at them not having a job, joining a gang is fast money, because being a gang, there's also drugs involved, probably robbing, etc. It's fast money for them just because of the lack of job opportunities. Because all of these young men, you look at them and they are educated or they have a trade to do, and when you speak to them on a daily basis, there's no jobs going on. I mean, I recently saw a video of Reno complaining about he can't get 300 workers to go to build a hotel. I mean, that's ridiculous. There's a lot of young men in St. Lucia that are capable of doing this stuff.
Now, Reno, I have a good rapport with Reno. I hope Reno is not just trying to set the stage for bringing in foreign workers to St. Lucia. Because that claim, I was very surprised to hear that he could not get workers in St. Lucia. And you are among your peers, and you are saying that young people do have a problem getting a job in St. Lucia. And the statistics bear that out, because unemployment is high among young people in St. Lucia. I remember during the reign of the United Workers' Party, one of the main concerns that we had as an administration when we first assumed office was the high rate of unemployment. At the time, it was in the region of about 25% unemployment. And we set about ensuring that we bring down those figures as quickly as possible. By 2019, before COVID, by 2019, we had reduced unemployment to 15%, and youth unemployment, we took it from the 40s to low 30s. And so I think that was remarkable. I mean, that doesn't mean, I will not say to you that I believe that is enough, because even more had to be done. But then we had the setback of COVID and so on. But we are now out of COVID, and we would expect that the programs that had been started, the trajectory that we were pursuing would have been continued to ensure that we could continue along those lines. But I'm happy that it is coming from you, the young people, so that hopefully the authorities will take heed and pay attention to that serious situation.
And just to add to what you said, Spider, with the decline during the United Workers' Party reign, that would have been done where we basically did not have any program per se leading towards that. But you would expect that with a whole program, the youth economy, with this administration, that there would have been a significant decline in unemployment in the country.
Zina, I don't want to interrupt you, but that's a specific question I have for the two of you. We'll come into the youth, we want to discuss the youth economy. I want your perspective of the youth economy. But while we're still touching on the area of criminal activity, crime-related activities, I want to bring to your attention the fact that the Prime Minister of St. Lucia is the Minister of National Security. Never mind, he has been accused of being an abject failure as a Minister of National Security, because under his watch, we have seen the most homicides for sure. There's no question about that. And very little to nothing has been done, and whatever has been done has not shown that it is effective. And in his defense, the Prime Minister said, and I quote, "I am not a policer, I'm a policeman." And it is his father that is a policeman. Now, I think that is a very unfortunate, poor cop-out from a leader.
Yes.
You know, when you have a responsibility, you must take your responsibility seriously, and you must lead as a leader. That cop-out of, well, it's not me, and that kind of thing is not acceptable. And so I want your opinion of that coming from your Prime Minister, your Minister of National Security. What is your view as young people of that kind of approach?
Well, Spider, you see, the criminals, they're just as smart as us. So if the leader is making that statement, the criminals have already noticed that there is no care in the world. So they could do what they want, and the Prime Minister really cares. So that man cares, so I go do as I please, because if we do it, he's saying not a police, he's not him. So, you know, the criminals feed off that. And that's what people don't understand. And to add to what you're saying, the Prime Minister is responsible for crime, and you also have a young person who is the Minister for Crime Prevention. Mm-hmm. So you would think that coming from a youth standpoint, a young person standpoint, that maybe you would have a better understanding. Because you know that people say young people, we speak a certain language to each other, we understand each other better. Right. So you would think that there would have been a better understanding, and maybe some programs after he would have been named the minister in charge of crime prevention, and maybe something would have come from it where you have maybe some new programs or something innovative that would speak to young people, but it's nothing. We're not seeing anything coming out of it.
What is your view, Cletuson?
So to me, it's ridiculous, because me as a young person, I would listen to the Prime Minister say this, and I'll blatantly say he do not care about us. If he cared, that wouldn't be the statement. And that's not the first time he's made ridiculous statements concerning crime. I mean, we saw an interviewer or a journalist asking him questions, and he will say it's not your business. So it's our business. Because, I mean, if you're incapable of doing the job, then, like we've been telling you, it's time to step down, because you are not doing a good job, sir. You are the Minister of National Security, and you should be, everything to do with crime should be your business. Every affair that happens in this country should be your business. So saying that you're not a police officer and your father was a police officer, then maybe your father should become the Prime Minister, because if you can't answer a simple question, or at least give us the assurance that everything will be okay, or you're working on something, then it makes no sense.
Yeah, because I have observed that we have not heard any strong, firm statement on the issue of crime in St. Lucia to indicate that the government is willing to stamp out criminal activity and that they're, serious about it. And I ask myself sometimes, is it because they are compromised themselves that they cannot take a strong stand on it? Anyway, still on the issue of the police, I'm putting you on the spot, Zina, as a young lady. There is a high-ranking police officer who has been accused of sexual assault. Mm-hmm. We are hearing that now the matter is under investigation. We have not heard any official statement. However, that notwithstanding, the gentleman is still in contention for promotion. Nothing has been done in terms of dealing with it that we as a public know of. I want your view. I would like you as a young lady to comment on this. Like, as we're talking about a sexual assault against women like yourself, and in some cases my understanding is that young women, albeit they are police officers, but they are young women like yourself. As a woman, what is your view on this matter?
Honestly, as a woman, it's disgusting that sometimes within your position you have to feel like you have to do something, or because your leader is a male that you must give up something in order for you to get to where you want to be. And a lot of persons in position, they tend to use that position for them to get what they want. And if that accusation is true, if it is under investigation, I personally believe that that person should be out of duty until that there is confirmation that maybe it did not happen. Because how would I feel comfortable? I have reported you, it would have been, I'm sure they would have said that, the report would have came from X, Y, and Z. I would not feel comfortable working within that same environment with you, knowing that this is what is happening. So I believe that that individual should be placed on suspension, or maybe sent on leave for that period of time until there is proper investigation where it says that yes, this happened, no, it did not happen. Because the women within the police force may not feel comfortable enough to do what they want or to express themselves how they want, given that, it's under investigation. We don't know what will come out of it. We don't know what will not come out of it.
In other words, you're calling for clear, definitive action to be taken. But it's interesting that we have women in cabinet. We have women who are part of the administrative team right now, and I'm referring specifically to Dr. Virginia Albert and Honorable Emma Hippolyte. We have not heard from them on that matter, even though Honorable Virginia Albert is in fact responsible for the police. I mean, you would think that she would be sensitive to that situation and, take decisive action to deal with the situation. I mean, not accusing the gentleman of being guilty.
No, we're not.
But an allegation was made. It demands of them that an investigation be conducted to deal with the situation. And so that seemed to be the modus operandi of the government, to sweep things under the carpet, not take responsibility, not show leadership, and be inactive on a number of issues. And even when they decide to take action on the things that they deem to be important, they're very secretive about it, or we get misleading statements, and if I have to put it blatantly, with lies coming from them, and to deal with everything is propaganda because it has worked for them in the past and they believe that it will continue to work for them. But let me just move on to another subject. I hear peers of mine who are a little older than you are. Among our conversation is cost of living, how expensive things are. Is that an issue for you as young people?
It's a huge issue. I'm scared to go in the supermarket. It's imagine you as a young person, we have nice taste as young people. We get paid, we want to go eat nice. You can't even do that. You get paid, and by the time you go buy Flow and buy Digicel as a young person, you can't even go at KFC and buy something nice for you to eat because the cost of living, it's expensive. I mean, today you go in the supermarket, the item is $3.99. You go back tomorrow, the item is $5.99. That's absurd. That's crazy.
So you can't even budget.
You cannot even budget as a young person. Yeah. You mean we're working hard as young people. We try our best. We make a salary. But the salary that you make cannot compare to the cost of living in St. Lucia, right? School is reopening. Mm-hmm. We have parents that have 2, 3, 4 children going to school, right?
Yeah.
By the time you go to SNS to maybe get just the little supplies, pens, pencils, that's over $300. 4 books is $160 something. Imagine you have 4 students going to school, primary school, secondary school, right? Your one child may have to stay behind. You cannot afford to buy that book, that you have to share that book with that child. I mean, yes, that's okay. But we should be in 2024 in a position where we are comfortable in our country, where we can go to the supermarket and shop. A parent with 4 children has to go to the supermarket almost every week.
Yeah, well, I just want to say, I'm not surprised that you were the first to jump on the question, but I'm coming to you, Cletuson, as a young man. I'm sure you may be affected as well, but I just want to make a comment here, because it is young people predominantly who have children.
Yes.
And so you were mentioning the difficulty you may have to cater for your children to go to school and so on. And that is why I find it unconscionable that a government, under the circumstances of the high cost of living, with the inflation that exists in St. Lucia, would cut down on the school transport subsidy that would help those very young mothers, single mothers especially, to ensure that their children can go to school. I am very disappointed, to see that while the government is saying that inflation is imported, that they have not done what they can do as a government, because, again, going back to subsidies, the price of fuel could have gone down when the price on the world market went down. It should have been passed on to the consumer. And I say so because when we talk of transportation, I started with transportation, when we talk of transportation, the cost of fuel has everything to do with transportation. That is why bus fares went up in St. Lucia. Who are the people who use the buses in St. Lucia? Predominantly poor people. And so there again, you could have eased the plight on the poor people by easing that. Now, you talk about being able to send your children to school, going to the supermarket to buy for them and so on. More than likely, you work and you want to send your children to school, give them a little lunch and so on. Most likely it's a sandwich. Okay, and the core thing for a sandwich is bread. Now, governments of the past, government after government, subsidized rice, flour, and sugar. I have my own views about the sugar, but for sure, flour and rice are staples in St. Lucia. Flour is the basic key commodity in bread. When you take away the subsidy on flour, obviously the bakers will pass on the cost to you, and as a result they clamored to get an increase in the cost of bread. As young people, I just want to remind you that 3 years ago you could have gotten 4 loaves for $1. Today, 3 years later, you can only get 2. So they have cut your dollar literally in half. Okay? In the past, we assisted people in stretching their dollar. This government is cutting your dollar. Okay? So that makes it even that much harder for young people to cope with the situation that exists. All the government had to do, rather than boast about all the taxes, the revenue that they collect in excess of what they projected, and by the way, they collected it from us, they should have continued to subsidize the flour to the extent that the cost of bread should not have gone up. Cletuson, as a young man, I understand where Zina was coming from, because most of the times we, the men, are not the ones that are concerned about the children and going to grocery and so on. But as a young man, how are you affected by the inflation that is taking place and the high cost of living that exists in St. Lucia today?
I mean, it's really bad. I mean, on a basic salary, you can't really live in St. Lucia. And not to mention that the government is actually boasting that they're about to implement a minimum wage, which is not a livable minimum wage. Because like Zina said, you go to the supermarket, by the time you buy groceries for your house, for your kids to send to school fees, books, the money is gone. You have nothing for yourself. You know what I mean? I classify myself as a handsome young man. You know? Bring out a female in this society, no, obviously you have to spend.
Right.
You could barely spend for yourself. So
I see.
So much less bringing someone out or just going out in general to have a good time. And on top of inflation, the government added the 2.5%. But
Well,
this is a different topic. But
I deliberately did not mention the 2.5. I figured that's not something that affects your young people. So I waited to hear if you were going to talk about it.
cost of living was high before the 2.5% levy. And it's introduced, and to be honest, what they explained the levy was supposed to be for, healthcare is still not up to where it's supposed to be in St. Lucia. So, you know, I think that's just poor excuses for the government. I mean, like you said, with the fuel, they had a chance to bring it down, and they did not. It's just clear that they do not care about the livelihoods of
So that is the feeling you're getting. Do you share that view that the government does not care about you, the young people?
Yes, I do.
Because I have complained a lot about the 2.5%. Because if you're telling me, to a certain extent, that is true, that some of the inflation is imported. Because most of what we consume here, we do not manufacture here, we do not produce here. So if it is expensive outside, obviously, it will be expensive to bring it here. But instead of seeing where you can cut down maybe on taxes and so on to make it more affordable, you have added a 2.5%. And the worst thing about the 2.5% is that it is compounded. Because by the time it gets to you, the consumer, it is possible that there are 2 or 3 2.5s added on it. And so that is not a government who's concerned about making your life better, making your life easier. But talking about that, they would say to you that, you need not worry, you need not complain. There is a youth economy that they have introduced that is there to make life better for you. I would like the two of you to comment on the whole program of the youth economy.
I mean, The youth economy, it's what I classify. It's also biased as well, because I mean, I could guarantee you, me as a young man going
walk in there.
go to there and they know me, I will not get the help I need. And even friends of mine who's not politically affiliated one of them spoke to me not too long ago and asking me about the youth economy, and he told me how long he's been trying to go there and nothing is coming out of it. So when I know a lot of my SLP friends that have benefited from it, and everybody I know that's affiliated with the United Workers Party that I know of could not get the help that they need through the youth economy. So I mean, as much as it's supposed to be there to help young people, it's really not doing the job it's supposed to do.
Okay, but before Zina chimes in, I just want to tell you, Cletuson, maybe you may strike good luck the fact that you're on the roundtable today. Because if you associate with the UWP, it is true that you may be victimized, or they may decide to assist Cletuson and politicize it, make a political issue of it. Now, that is not supposed to be a political issue. That's a national program,
Right.
and we use taxpayers' dollars and the countries from the money from the country's coffers to fund it. And to say you're going to grant, you know, an award of the funds needed to an individual and then take it and make a political ad out of it, I think that's despicable. I think that's low. But we have 1 more minute before we end this segment. I just want you to comment on the youth economy, you know.
The youth, as a young person, when I heard of the youth economy it's a good program, but I have my reservations. Like Peterson mentioned, the biasness. It's a national program, which means it should be for all St. Lucians and not a selected few St. Lucians because of maybe your political affiliation. That should not be. With the youth economy, we give you the money, but is there a mentorship program? Because you know, young persons, we get the money, we want to go and spend the money. Is there somebody guiding you after you've received that money as to how to spend that money and how to use the money wisely? Will it be continued? And that's a problem as young persons, and why we young persons are insecure in our country, because we always see something start nice, rose, everything nice, and then after a few, it's gone, it's dead. Will it be continued? Is there a mentorship program for the young persons who would have joined? So are we just giving money because it's young persons? They say the youth is the future, the youth will determine the next elections. Are we just giving money just because of that? Right? Or are we guiding those young persons? We give you the money, this is your mentor, they're going to guide you. When you receive the money, you go into your project, you take it from there.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing you saying, Zina, it seems to be a half-baked program that, you know, requires a lot more than just what is taking place right now. But we have run out of time for the second segment. We will take a break, and when we return, we'll continue the discussion on the youth economy, and we will go into 1 or 2 other areas. So I want to ask you, listeners and viewers, to stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Do we have a government in place that cannot manage the country sufficiently that if you're trying to build a house, that if you are trying to set up a business that require a water connection, it means that you can't be connected? What are you supposed to do with your plans? And this is the state that our water infrastructure has actually reached in the country. So Bradley is absolutely right when he said that, look, this is not just basic, this is absolutely essential. And WASCO making this announcement, the government must really do something urgently. And this is one of the most important and crucial initiatives that they could undertake to ensure that a critical component of our infrastructure is dealt with.
Public debt in 2022 was at $4,395.1 million. In 2023, it is at $4,783,000,000, almost a 400 million increase in debt. Now remember, this is the government that spoke about for the first year they had to do no borrowings. And all of a sudden in the last 2 years, which means that our debt to GDP, which was just at 69.5% in 2022, has gone to 72.9% in 2023. And these are just preliminary figures.
Welcome back to the Roundtable, and today we have a very special edition of the Roundtable brought to you by the United Workers' Party. We have two very eloquent, intelligent young people articulating the views of young people themselves, and so you're hearing it from the horse's mouth. They are telling you from their perspective how they see things in this country. When we ended in the last segment, we were talking about the youth economy that the current administration has touted so much about and so on. And I was asking the young people with me here on the panel whether they are feeling the impact of the youth economy program in a positive way. We've heard what they have said so far, but that's just to end the conversation on this youth economy. So you were saying, Zina, that a lot more needs to be done. That is not just dishing out money as a political gimmick to win an election, but ensuring that in fact young people get into entrepreneurship and be successful by providing them with the mentorship, the guidance, the training that is needed. Do you share that view, Cletuson?
Yeah, I do, because like you said, youth need guidance. Because let's see, for example, I gave a business proposal and I asked for $10,000. They give me the $10,000. I decided, okay, I have $10,000 in my hands. I don't need that business anymore. I could go spend it widely. So, stuff like that. I mean, they could have workshops for those that they're giving the money so they could understand how to spend it and where they should invest the money. So I agree 100% with Zina.
Okay. All right. But talking about that, so you're saying that there should be an educational component to the program. Now, let's talk about education. I mean, everyone should educate themselves. Everyone should keep, advancing their education throughout life, it is said. But when we talk about education, we tend to focus more particularly on young people. And we say to young people that, to get ahead in life, to have a good future, you need to be educated. What are your views on Sir Arthur Lewis Community College and the education, as it relates to the education needs of young people in this country? Because I chose Sir Arthur Lewis because it's one of our top tertiary institutions that's government owned. So what is your view about it?
Well, with Sir Arthur, I attended Sir Arthur. My 2 years there, it wasn't bad, but I do think that they could improve a lot in education. But you go to Sir Arthur, you get an education, yet you still don't get a job. So that's the main thing. It's not that you're not getting education, it's what happens after you get the education. Most young people might have to fly out of the country to get a good job, or to get a job in the field that they study, because St. Lucia might not be offering that type of job.
So are you saying then that the programs offered by Sir Arthur should be more in line and in tune with the needs that exist in St. Lucia?
Correct.
Okay. And so I think that means that it should be guided more by the market forces in terms of what the demands are on the ground. Do you have any views as to what you think?
I share the same views as Cletuson. I went to Sir Arthur as well, but I attended the Southern Extension, which is in Vieux-Fort. And I remember when I went there, most of the courses I had to look at, because I did office administration, would be shorthand, and I'm like, in that time, do we use shorthand as a part of our everyday? In the offices in 2024, these are things that we don't use. So I think that there is room for improvement in terms of making it more relevant to today's world, to suit the market that young people are interested in, or more interested in today.
I see. So, in terms of technology, can you see SAFA perhaps incorporating more technology that, that'll make you more marketable at the end?
Yes.
And so on. Okay, granted. But do any of you intend furthering your studies? I mean, I know both of you said you attended SAFA, but say to go to the next level of tertiary education, do any of you here intend to do that?
Yes, I do. I've already started. When I believe in plan A, plan B, plan C, because you could never tell if your plan A would work. So I have started. I've been to Monroe where I did communications, media, journalism. So I could go down that path if I choose to. But I've already started, like I said, with online. But I don't think I'm disciplined enough. So I intend to. But I currently am looking at Monroe to see because the programs that we offer, it's so. Okay. Yeah, there's not a wide range. You have to go outside of St. Lucia for you to get.
That's the point I was coming
Yes.
to. I mean, there may be some programs that are offered here, but invariably, more often than not, you have to travel overseas, and in terms of the cost, it can be prohibitive. I mean, how do you look at it, because Cletuson, is it your intention to further your education?
Yes, it's my intention to further my education because I studied tourism at SAFA, so that's something I would like to get my bachelor's in one day. Still waiting on the Prime Minister who promised that every child in every household will go to university. But that's something I do plan on doing, and like many of my peers who actually study tourism, they don't further their education in St. Lucia. They normally have to travel to do so.
That's a very expensive proposition.
And it's very expensive. You have to pay for staying on campus or even renting a house as well. So, I mean, it would be better if we improve our education system in that way, where our locals don't have to travel to further education. They could stay right there where it would be cheaper for them.
And traveling also has its disadvantages, because I know many persons who would have left St. Lucia to go and study, and after they're done, they don't come back home to offer their services to their country. They rather stay where they are. They're more comfortable. They said the salary is better. So they stay where they are and they don't come back home to offer their services, or they would study something, like they would study tourism, and when they get home it's difficult to get a job within what they studied, so they just have to settle for whatever that's available. I wouldn't say preventing, but kind of barring somebody who's qualified within that area to work within the position.
Okay, now if I can just shift focus a little. Very often in St. Lucia, people will say to you, once you broach the subject of politics, I'm not involved in politics, and I'm not talking politics and so on. And by and large, if we are honest, we will admit it's because people are afraid to express their political views for fear of reprisals, fear of victimization. But you two seem to be very brave young people. In your introduction, you introduce yourselves by saying you, Cletuson, are the president of the Babonneau United Workers' Party youth arm, and you indicated that you're the vice president of the National United Workers' Party youth organization. So the two of you all are in politics.
Yes, we are.
Now, what is your view, general view of St. Lucian politics? How do you see it? I mean, I've been around. That's not reality, but by your standards, I'm the old guard. I'm the old guard, and we know what obtained in our politics and so on. From a youthful perspective, how do you see what obtains now, and what is your view about what obtains now? I want to hear from both of you as far as the politics is concerned. Now, before I allow you to answer me, I want to say that I'm very pleased and proud as a member of the United Workers' Party to see the number of young people that we are attracting to our fold. And if I have not done it before, in fact, I want to publicly welcome the two of you into the fold of the United Way. You are the future of the party, and by extension, the future of the country. And so, I just want to say, I mean, I can't resist it. I don't want to put any cat out of the bag, but I can't resist it. You all are involved in the party, so you all know what I'm talking about. There are a few young people who are even going as far as offering themselves as candidates to contest the upcoming general election for the United Workers' Party.
Yep.
That speaks well for the United Workers' Party. It means that the party is being rejuvenated. Okay? So much so that while the party didn't get rid of old heads like myself, I mean, we play a different role now, but there are people who come in to replace us gradually, and I'm proud to see that. I'm pleased to see that. And I want to encourage you young people. But before I go too far, let me hear your views about the politics as a whole.
Okay, so I come from a strong SLP family, to the point where my uncle ran in Micoud South on a SLP ticket some elections ago. When I was my first time voting, when I looked at the St. Lucia Labour Party and the United Workers' Party, I did my homework, I did my background check. The policies of the United Workers' Party is what drove me to become a member of the United Workers' Party. Even if I've heard everything, my family, I went to SLP rallies. You know, at that time you didn't have a choice. Your family read, you read. But when you're of age and you're able to read and to do your background check and to read the policies and what the party offers, especially as a young person, because we could say that we have two, you know, political parties in St. Lucia, because we don't have much to look from. So when you read the policies of the United Workers' Party and you read the policies of the St. Lucia Labour Party, as a young person, I gravitated towards the United Workers' Party. And I do not regret that decision up to a day like today. When I met Dr. Gail Rigobert at the time, I said to her that I come from a strong Labour family. That never deterred her as a candidate, or at the time leader.
I'm so pleased to hear.
Leader of the opposition at the time.
Gail, you heard that?
She never looked at me any other way, and that gave me that security that I needed. That's the right place for me. And everywhere I go, I mean, I've done a youth show for the party that was a hotspot during the last elections.
Right.
People know where I stand, and I'm not ashamed of where I stand. I've been victimized, I've been called out, I've been called Gail Bolom on social media, but that will not deter me from doing what I have to do for my party. Right? That's my party. I support my party. I have a choice as a St. Lucian, and that's a choice that I chose. And I don't think that I should be victimized because of the choice that I made when I'm living in a democratic country. But it is what it is.
I think you did something very wise, and not because I'm in the UWP I'm saying so. The right thing to do is to look at the policies, compare them. Young people, follow the footsteps of your colleague Zina. Compare, contrast, and then choose. Invariably, you will may very well find yourself choosing the United Workers' Party. And I'm pleased and proud to hear that, and I want to take this opportunity to encourage the leadership and the fold of the United Workers' Party to continue along that path. And what I'm very pleased to hear is, while all allegations and accusations are being made, for you as a young person to say yourself that you come from an SLP background, where you were not discriminated against, you were not victimized or intimidated by the United Workers' Party. And that I would like to encourage the party to continue, not because the SLP is going the other route that we should follow. It is the right way to do it. We should continue. Cletuson, why are you UWP? Why are you involved in the politics? First of all, of St. Lucia, and you chose UWP.
So, you know, I was, like, you know, I was born in a political house. I was born with my mother following the United Workers' Party everywhere, being on platforms, speaking for specifically Ezekiel at the time, well, when I was old enough to understand what was going on. But I mean, I really got involved during the last election, because that's when I made up my mind deeply following politics and the different policies of the United Workers' Party and also the St. Lucia Labour Party. I mean, I saw when we were in opposition, from my first time I remembered us being in opposition, and the first time I remember us being in government, the work that has been done. And I felt like the United Workers' Party did more work in St. Lucia and then compared to the St. Lucia Labour Party. And also in my constituency in Babonneau, seeing Ezekiel, the amount of work Ezekiel did in Babonneau compared to the work Alvina did at the time when she was in government, I realized that Ezekiel was the right way to go. And even now, Ezekiel never victimized anybody as well, not that I know of, because I witnessed a situation where a St. Lucia Labour Party person came to him for a job and he gave it to them with open arms, no problem. When the last time Virginia won, one of my youth from my youth group went to her for a job, and the first thing she told him was, go ask Ezekiel. You're telling a young person, go ask Ezekiel for a job. So this stuff alone now will tell me, like, I chose the right party.
It warms my heart to hear what I'm hearing there right now from you directly. Here we have a young lady who says she comes from an SLP background. When she assessed the policies and approach of the UWP, she felt the UWP was a better option. Here we have a young man who says he comes from a UWP background, but when he was old enough to make a decision for himself, he compared the two parties, looked at the policies and the approach, and felt he is the UWP. St. Lucia, I say to you, if all of you do the same, and I'm not just asking you to blindly follow the United Workers' Party, but if you do the same, you may very well find out for yourself that the UWP is the better option. And that warms my heart to and I want to say to those especially who will be contesting the election, including the young newcomers, that don't be tempted to go after anybody, to victimize anyone. It pays to do it the right way. When you become a representative, you're a representative for all. And I think that should be maintained as the modus operandi of the United Workers' Party. So, you say why you are involved in politics, and why you have chosen the vehicle that you have chosen, which is the United Workers' Party. But what is your general view of the politics in St. Lucia in terms of, how the two parties operate? I mean, for me, there's a fundamental difference, but I want it from your perspective. How do you see it? What do you think of the politicians of today?
When you look at the St. Lucia Labour Party and you look at the United Workers' Party, especially now, and growing up looking at it as well, the St. Lucia Labour Party, they're a government that how would I say it? For school is closed, there is a step program for 2 days work, they give you 2 days work, they pay you. But what is they're more of a handout government, whereas the United Workers' Party, they're long term, right? So you come to look for a job, they may place you someplace where you have something for a long period of time. When you look at the NICE program, you had persons working for a long period of time. Rather than 2 months, you get the money, you spend the money. You have to wait another Christmas maybe for you to get some monies in your pockets again. Okay, so in other words, you're saying the United Workers' Party gives meaning to the saying that instead of giving a man a fish, you teach him how to fish. Correct. The St. Lucia Labour Party will give you the fish, and I know why they'll give you the fish, because they want to keep you dependent on them, so they keep coming back to them. But then the United Workers' Party wants you to be independent and to grow. And so that is a fundamental approach. And I'm happy it came from you, by your own observation, because that is fundamentally the approach of the United Workers' Party. And I will tell you another thing too, talking about fish, while we're in the animal world. It was said one time, and I really, concur, that the Labour Party, they're good at propaganda. And, just spreading propaganda, whether it is true or not, it doesn't matter. They like the yard fowl that lays one egg and cackles all around the place, keep noise for the whole day because it laid one egg. But the UWP has the turtle's approach. The turtle will lay 100 eggs, crawls up, more particularly in the night under the cover of darkness, quietly lays 100 eggs and quietly crawls back into the sea without any fuss or fanfare. And that is the fundamental difference. And I say to you that I believe that it is the duty of a politician who represents people to do what he has to do for people and not look for any accolades or anything like that. Of course, you'll want to be returned, but your work is what should speak for itself, and to determine and so on. But do any of you have political ambitions? I'm putting you on the spot.
in the long term to say become a politician.
For sure.
Now don't live here and say I asked you to become a politician. You know.
I mean that's one of the reasons why I entered politics, because it's not just for me being in the background, for me not to be seen. I want to be directly involved. So that's something I do have plans for in the future, to become a politician, because I like to see development.
Despite all what you know about us.
Well, I'm smart enough to know what I've heard about you is untrue, because like you said, the Labour Party only gives propaganda, corruption, and also not to mention that they like to tarnish names. So something will literally not be true about you, and they will mention it and make the general public believe whatever is going on is actually true. So I mean that stuff I stand against, and I feel like me being a politician and the young people as well as coming up that aspire to be politicians could bring that change in the country.
You know, sometimes people of my generation look at the younger people and we make some judgments about you, and some of it is founded on what we observe. One of the things I observe, especially among, well, the general society of St. Lucia today, is that we glorify, we praise, and we honor crooked people in our society. Now, let me be more specific. Drug dealers, people with criminal background, once they have money, it doesn't matter how they obtain it, what they did to get it, and so on. And we glorify those people, you know, as opposed to people, hardworking people who are not honest living and so on. These are not people that are held up in society and so on. I mean, you as young people, what is your view about that approach? I mean, I know it is glamorous and so on to see the guy who drives the nice car and have the gold chains around his neck and so on, that these are the people we glorify and honor. But do you see that serving our community, doing good for our society?
No, because I can have the nice car, but there's the right way to get in the nice car. I could go and work hard and do it the right way and drive my nice car and not having to look to my back every time I'm driving my nice car. Right? We can glorify the people with the nice things, knowing that they went through the right channels to get those nice things. Right?
Because you see, it brings us back. So that youth are seeing what's going on in society, that, okay, a drug dealer is being glorified because of what he has. So that means I could be a drug dealer to get glorified the same way. And that's a bad trend that we're setting. And correct me if I'm wrong, was it CIDs being built by a known drug dealer around? I mean, that's stuff where, like, as a young person, they will just look at them like, you know what, that's easy money. So let me just get myself into that life, and maybe I'll get a big contract as well, or I'll be glorified as well. And not to mention, we have one sitting in government right now. So it just shows that we take nothing serious in this country, that you could be how bad you want, that you'll be up there being glorified and stuff.
Okay, but you are still young people, although listening to you, the two of you seem to have a very good sound mind and have made up your mind about a lot of things, and you have your own focus, and you have come up with your own conclusions about a lot of things. But what is your view about the current sitting government in terms of certain individuals' characters? And I say so against the backdrop that we have heard a number of scandals being mentioned. And just to refresh your memory, we have the approach that was taken with the GPH thing, where our port were sold out to foreigners for so many years, and they refused to even give us the details about that. The halls of justice, I call it the halls of injustice, that was again dished out to another foreigner, and whereas it costs, according to the contractor, $143 million to build, St. Lucia is going to pay over $290 million for it in the end. We have the situation with the Banan's land that was sold by Richard Frederick on the price, you know, and we have now the CIP scandal that is looming large over St. Lucia. And, you know, while the minister is talking about people trying to destroy the reputation of St. Lucia, that is what is destroying the reputation of St. Lucia under his watch, and so on. I mean, I'm just mentioning a few of the scandals that exist. We had World Cup cricket where they borrowed $80 million, you know, to say to upgrade 3 playing fields. And I have gone by all 3 playing fields, and I'm looking for $80 million Wolf of upgrade, I'm not seeing it. So, you wonder, whether the WTF doesn't apply there as well. We can't be told who is the contractor. All the secrecy and that kind of thing, the modus operandi, the way they go about doing business, leaves a lot to be desired in terms of transparency, accountability, and proper governance practices. What is your view of this as young people?
You see, Spider, as a leader, you need to learn to hold your team accountable for when something or when they have done something, because it comes back to you as a leader. So all those scandals, we don't hear him coming on news to say anything about it. There is no explanation to the public as to why it was done this way, why it was done that way, and he's not holding the respectable ministers accountable for the actions. So if you're not holding me accountable for my action, I might as well do as I please, because technically you can say there is no leader. If your head is not good, then automatically, eventually, everything on you will just start falling out, will just start returning. And that is what is happening to this administration. We need a leader who is firm, who can put his 2 feet down and stand up to the people who he has underneath his wing. And he cannot do that. So that is where the problem starts.
Well, I concur with you, certainly. And you reminded me, while I was in cabinet serving under the leadership of Alan Chasney, we had 2 of our members who found themselves in some difficulties, and they both were asked to step down. Mm-hmm. Now, that is very uncomfortable. That is very, that's not something that people would look forward to doing. Mm-hmm. But as a leader, you have to make unpopular, uncomfortable choices sometimes, and you have to be firm and you have to show leadership. And that is one of the things I commend Alan Chasney for, as a leader and so on. So I suspect maybe that's one of the things that attracted you, based on what you said, to having Alan Chasney as a leader of the party that you chose. So, Cletuson, your view about, I didn't even mention the fact that we are hearing that there are sitting ministers who are involved in blackmail and so on, and instead of dealing with the issues, they either skirt around it, they either come up with lies, they scapegoat and try to point fingers at other people, mainly Alan Chasney, or they simply tell you, do not ask the question, they're not answering the question, that kind of thing, or they come out with outright lies. So, what do you think of that kind of approach?
I should have seen sentiments with Zina, but then, like she said, instead of the leader correcting his ministers or probably even asking them to step down, depends on how bad the situation is, they tend to cover it up as much as possible and think that St. Lucians will just forget about it. Look, in terms of the passport situation, it's hard for a citizen of St. Lucia to even go on the line to get a passport, but they're selling it out to foreigners who could get it in a matter of weeks. Recently I saw a video of a lady unboxing St. Lucia passports for her and her family. It's kind of ridiculous that if it was the other way around and it was the United Workers' Party administration doing this type of stuff, they'll be calling for our necks, asking us to step down, and you're not seeing it being done in their case. So I think that's something we St. Lucians have to look at and know that we have to get rid of this government, because our country is in crisis and our country is going to fall if we do not get them out of it.
Because we are coming to the end of our program today, which I must tell you was very enlightening. You have 2 articulate young people here who have actually brought out their points. But the way you said what you just said there, I was about to ask you to give me some parting remarks, but I think you've just done that. You preempted me by doing that. But I want to give Zina an opportunity to, make some closing remarks, since we are running out of time and coming to the end of the program.
Yes, so thank you very much for having me on this program. And like Cletuson said, our country is on the brink of falling. The ship is sinking. So we need to do what's right. I don't think that Senator can sustain another 5 years underneath this administration. So the onus is on us solutions to look at what is happening and make a decision. Like I did, weigh your choices. You have options. You have 2 choices. Go with the right choice to ensure that we can have our country afloat again and back to where we know our country, know our country of what it's supposed to be and what it is. That is sweet Senusha and sweet Helen.
Thank you very much. I must say this was a very enjoyable program for me. Enlightening, because it is good to have a different perspective, that is the youth perspective. And you were very forthcoming. You made hosting the program very easy, quite apart from being enjoyable. I want to thank you very much for coming on this program. I look forward to having you on the program again, whether I'm the host or my colleague is hosting. And I am hoping for one thing, that your presence here today has opened the way for other young people, because I think we need to hear from our young people, and that is the thrust of the United Workers' Party, to give young people the opportunity. And I know for sure there will be, because since they are going to be young candidates, they will have to present themselves as well. So I want to thank you very much. It was a very enjoyable program. I want to thank all of you who tuned in, who listened to Roundtable. This was Roundtable with a difference. A young Roundtable special edition with a youthful perspective. I want to thank you and ask that you tune in on next week, on next Thursday, for another edition of the Roundtable brought to you by the United Workers' Party. Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again, viewers. Have a good night, and stay tuned to the Roundtable for the future.